Toyota 4Runner was parked outside, and he could be there in an hour if he pushed it. Benjamin, dear boy, why couldn't you have been good? Why did you bring out the worst in me when there was so much to love? Benjamin had been such a beauty, and the loss that Taylor felt now was horrifying. And not only the physical and emotional drain, there was the great financial loss. 5 years ago, he'd inherited a little over $2 million. It was going too fast, much too fast. He couldn't afford to play like this, but how could he ever stop now? He wanted another boy already. He needed to be loved, and to love someone. Another Benjamin, only not an emotional wreck as the poor boy had been. So he stayed in his office for the entire day to avoid an excruciating hour-long tutorial at 4 o'clock. He pretended to be marking term papers in case someone knocked, but he never looked at a single page. Instead, he obsessed. He finally contacted Sterling around 7 o'clock. "I want to make another purchase," he said.
Chapter 46. I visited Sampson and Billy one night and had a great time with them, talking about babies and scaring Big Bad John Sampson as much as I could. I tried to talk to Jamila at least once a day, but White Girl was starting to heat up, and I knew what that meant. I was probably about to get lost in the case. A married couple, Slav Vasiliev and Zoya Petrov, had been found murdered in the house they rented on Long Island. We had learned that the husband and wife had come to the United States 4 years before. They were suspected of bringing Russian and other Eastern European women here for the purpose of prostitution, and also to bear children who would be sold to affluent couples. Agents from our New York office were all over the murder scene on Long Island. Photographs of the two victims had been shown to the high school students who had seen the Connolly abduction and to Audrey Meek's children. They had identified the couple as the kidnappers. I wondered why the bodies had been left there. As examples? For whom? Monty Donnelly and I regularly met at 7 before I had to attend orientation classes for the day. We were analyzing the Long Island murders. Monty pulled together everything she could find on the husband and wife, as well as other Russian criminals working in the U.S., the so-called Red Mafia. She was hot-wired into the organized crime section over at the Hoover Building, and also the Red Mafia squad in the Bureau's New York office. "I brought everything bagels from D.C., I said, as I entered her cube at 10 minutes past 7 Monday. "Best in the city. According to Zagat, anyway." "You don't seem too excited." "You're late," Monty said, without looking up from her computer screen. She'd mastered the droll deadpan delivery style favored by hackers. "These bagels are worth it," I said. "Trust me." "I don't trust anybody," Monty replied. She finally glanced up at me and smiled. Nice smile. Worth the wait. "You know that I'm kidding, right? It's just a tough girl act, Alex. Give her the bagels." I laughed. I'm used to cop humor. "Oh, I'm honored," she muttered, deadpan again, as she looked back at the glowing computer screen. "He thinks I'm a cop, not just a desk jockey. You know, they started me in fingerprinting. The absolute bottom." I liked Monty, but I had the sense that she needed a lot of support. I knew she'd been divorced for about 2 years. She'd majored in criminology at Maryland for undergrad, where she had also pursued another interesting passion, studio arts. Monty still took classes in drawing and painting, and of course there was the mural in her cube. She yawned. "Sorry. I watched Alias with the boys last night. That'll be Grandma's problem when she has to get them up this morning." Monty's home life was another thing we had in common. She was a single parent with 2 young kids and a doting grandmother who lived less than a block away. The grandmother was her ex-husband's mother, which told the story of the marriage. Jack Donnelly had played basketball at Maryland, where he and Monty met. He was a big drinker in college, and it got worse once he graduated. Monty said he'd never recovered from being all everything in high school and then just another guard for the Maryland Terrapins. Monty was 5 foot even, and joked that she hadn't played any kind of ball at Maryland. She told me her nickname in high school was Spaz. "I've been reading all about women being traded and sold from Tokyo to Riyadh," she said. "Breaks my heart, and it pisses me off. Alex, we're talking some of the worst slavery in history. What's with you men?" I looked at her. "I don't buy and sell women money. Neither do any of my friends." "Sorry. I'm carrying around a little extra baggage because of Jack the Rat and a few other husbands I know." She looked at her computer screen. "Here's a choice quote for today. Know what the Thai premier said about the thousands of women from his country sold into prostitution? Thai girls are just so pretty. And here's the premier on 10-year-old girls being sold. Come on, don't you like young girls too? I swear to God he said that." I sat down next to Monty and peered at her computer screen. So now somebody's opened a lucrative market for suburban white women. Who? And where are they working out of? Europe? Asia? The U.S.? The murdered couple could be a break for us. Russians. What do you think? She asked. Could be a ring operating out of New York, Brighton Beach. Or maybe they're headquartered in Europe. The Russian mob is set up just about everywhere these days. It's not the Russians are coming anymore. They're here. Monty started to spit out information. The Solntseva gang is the largest crime syndicate in the world right now. Did you know that? They're big here, too. Both coasts. The Red Mafia has basically collapsed in their country. They smuggled close to $100 billion out of Russia, and a lot of it came here. You know, we've got major task forces working in L.A., San Francisco, Chicago, New York, D.C., Miami. The Reds bought banks in the Caribbean and Cyprus. Believe it or not, they've taken over prostitution, gambling, and money laundering in Israel. In Israel. I finally got a few words in. I spent a couple of hours last night reading the files from Anti-Slavery International. The Red Mafia comes up there, too. I'll tell you one other thing. She looked at me. That kid who was grabbed in Newport. I know it's a different pattern. I get it. But I do believe he's part of this. What do you think? I nodded. So did I. And I also thought that Monty had great street smarts for somebody who rarely left the office. So far, she was the best person I'd met at the Bureau. And here we were in her tiny cube, trying to solve White Girl. Chapter 47. I had never really stopped being a student since my days at Johns Hopkins, and it had served me well in the Washington PD, even given me a certain mystique. I hoped it would be the same in the Bureau, though it hadn't been so far. I set myself up with a supply of black coffee and started in on the Russian mob research. I needed to know everything about them, and Monty Donnelly was a willing accomplice. I made notes along the way, though I usually remember most of what is important enough and don't need to write it down. According to the FBI files, the Russian mob was now more diverse and powerful in America than La Cosa Nostra. Unlike the Italian mafia, the Russians were organized into loose networks that cooperated with, but weren't dependent on one another. At least not so far. A major benefit was that the loose style of organization avoided RICO prosecutions by the government. No conspiracies could be proved. There were two distinctly different types of Russian mobsters. The knuckle-draggers were into extortion, prostitution, and racketeering, and their particular crime group was called the Solntseva. The second type of Russian mobster operated at a more sophisticated level, often securities fraud and money laundering. These were the neo-capitalist criminals, called the Izmailova. For the moment, I decided to concentrate on the first group, the lowlifes, especially the brigades involved with prostitution. According to the Bureau's OC section report, the prostitute business operated a lot like Major League Baseball. A group of prostitutes could actually be traded from an owner in one city to one in another. As a footnote, a survey conducted among 7th-grade girls in Russia listed prostitution among the top 5 career choices of the girls when they grew up. Several historical anecdotes had been inserted in the file to represent the Russian criminal mentality. Smart and ruthless. According to one story, Ivan the Terrible had commissioned St. Basil's Cathedral to rival, even surpass, the great churches of Europe. He was pleased with the result and invited the architect to the Kremlin. When the artist arrived, his blueprints were burned and his eyes poked out, thus ensuring that he could never create a finer cathedral for anyone else. There were several more contemporary examples in the report, but that was how the Red Mafia worked. It was what we were up against if the Russians were behind White Girl. Chapter 48.
Something incredible was about to happen. It was a gorgeous afternoon in eastern Pennsylvania. The art director found himself lost in the dazzling blue of the sky, and the reflections of the white clouds sliding across his windshield were mesmerizing. Am I doing the right thing now? He had asked himself several times during the ride. He thought that he was. You have to admit that it's beautiful, he said to the bound passenger in his Mercedes G-Class SUV. It is, said Audrey Meek. She was thinking that she believed she would never see the outdoors again, never smell fresh grass and flowers. So where was this madman taking her with her hands tied? They were driving away from his cabin. Going where? What did it mean? She was terrified, but trying not to show it. Small talk, she told herself. Keep him talking. You like this G-Class? She asked, and immediately knew it was an insane question, just insane. His tight smile, but especially his eyes, told her that he thought so too, and yet he answered politely. I do, actually. At first I thought it was the final proof that rich people are incredibly stupid. I mean, it's kind of like putting a Mercedes logo on a wheelbarrow and then paying triple for it. But I do like the oddness of the vehicle, the rigid lines of the design, the gizmos like lockable differentials. Of course, I'll have to get rid of this one now, won't I? Oh, God. She was afraid to ask why, but maybe she knew already. She'd seen the car he drove. Maybe someone else had too. But she'd also seen his face, so he wasn't really making sense. Or was he? Suddenly, Audrey found that she couldn't talk at all. No words would come out of her mouth, which was very dry. This self-professed nice guy who said he wanted to be her friend, but who had raped her half a dozen times, was going to kill her very soon. And then what? Bury her out here in the beautiful woods? Dump her body in a gorgeous lake with a heavy weight attached to it? Tears formed in Audrey's eyes, and her brain buzzed as if there were a short in the circuits. She didn't want to die. Not now. Not like this. She loved her children, her husband, George, and even her company. It had taken her so long, so much sacrifice and hard work to get her life right, and now this had to happen, this fluke, this incredibly bad luck. The art director turned sharply onto a narrow dirt road, then sped down it much too fast. Where was he going? Why so fast? What was at the end of the road? But apparently they weren't going all the way to the end. He was braking. My God! No! Audrey screamed. No! Please! Don't! He stopped the car, but let the engine run. Please! She pleaded. Oh, please! Don't do this! Please, please, please! You don't have to kill me! The art director merely smiled. Give us a hug, Audrey. Then get out of the car before I change my mind. You're free. I'm not going to hurt you. You see, I love you too much.
Chapter 49. There was a break in White Girl. One of the women had been found. Alive. I was rushed to Bucks County, Pennsylvania, in one of the 2 Bell helicopters kept at Quantico for emergencies. A few senior agents had told me that they'd never been up in one of the helicopters. It didn't sit too well with them. Now here I was becoming a regular during my orientation period. There were benefits to being on the director's fast track. The sleek black Bell set down in a small field in Norristown, Pennsylvania. During the flight, I found myself thinking of a recent orientation class. We'd burned fingernail clippings so that everybody would know what a DOA smelled like. I already knew, and I didn't relish experiencing it again. I didn't think there would be any DOAs on this trip to Pennsylvania. Unfortunately,